this episode 32?
You're
I'm pretty
nailing it,
sure.
man.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have to.
Yeah, you got it.
All right. Welcome, hockey fans, to the Hockey Toolkit, episode 32. I am Trevor DiCarlo, and I'm joined by
Andrew Trimble.
Coach. How we been? It's been a little bit.
It's been a little bit. We had a long run with our advisors series. I think that I've got a lot of good feedback from a lot of people who listened to the episodes, and that it was really enlightening, and definitely gave them a different look inside the, pulled the curtain back a little bit. But now we're back into hockey programming and talking about some different things that can help some coaches. So advisor stuff will take a backseat a little bit, but there's still some stuff a couple rocks we got to turn over though.
Yeah. Well,
what do you think, Trev?
I think with that, yeah, we'll definitely uncover those as time goes on. But I think it was a good way to step in, kind of see things what they were. I think our opinions changed. I'll speak for myself. I got more insight. Definitely. I think one of them was better than the other for sure. But outside of that, yeah, I mean, there's more that we can always talk about, and I think that'll probably come up maybe in the next couple months as we start here kind of talking about off season. But we're still, I mean, let me phrase that. I've been in off season now for about a couple of weeks. I know you though. I mean, your off season just kicked off this past weekend? Not even Monday, right?
Yeah. So I coached 3 teams this year. Barron's team, the 2015 Spartans team, the Mites, and then I coached the 16s team and our EHL Premier team. And I'm a proud claim that I've had 2 teams go to the finals and lost both in the same year. Congrats to me.
Yeah, but you know what? You got them there. That's all that's what you got to do. And outside of that, it's like leading a horse to water. You can't make them drink it.
Well, I would honestly say that you're so true. It's both teams got there they didn't have 80% win percentage seasons. They weren't in first place all year. They got to go through some adversity and struggle and figuring it out. The 16th team went on like an 8-game win streak just to get to the finals, including the playoff run. And our P team did as well. We finished in second in the division, and we had to just battle, and it was amazing. It was an amazing season. In many ways, felt like a return to normalcy after their COVID years for sure.
No, and that's something that we definitely talk about in a little bit with our interviewee today. Before we get to that, though, we got some other stuff to talk about. But no, I mean that's fantastic, and you guys should definitely you and Coach Coons should definitely be happy with what you guys did. I mean, and what the boys did. That's at the end of the day. I mean, I've never had a season that didn't have some type of adversity. I wish I could go through like one where it's just smooth sailing, but I think that would also be boring though too. But I don't know. Part of me is also like, I want a smooth sailing season. But no, it's good though. I mean, you got where you were through the hard work and efforts, and just get in the ring. Got to get in the ring, right?
That's right. I love those seasons. I've had like 1 or 2 of those seasons where you walk off the bus and you got the best team automatically, and you have to really screw it up to lose. But this season wasn't like that. This season was, if we came off the bus with some level of intensity and the kids were dialed in, we got a chance, and they made the most of those chances. So it's a pretty proud coach looking back at those this season.
So now you're in the quote unquote off season. I mean, it's always season for you with all the work that you guys got to do behind the scenes. But what does that kind of look like now? What is like the next April? What does April and May look like for you?
A lot of scouting, recruiting. Like we were at the benefit. Our EHL Premier team was the youngest team in the league, or close to the youngest team in the league. So we have a lot of potential returners, and also a lot of kids we're elevating up to our EHL team. So recruiting is in full swing, but we're in a good situation to start because of all those returners. I leave next week. I go down to I'm doing a long road trip. I did it last year to Atlanta. I drove all the way from New Hampshire to Atlanta. And this year I'm going from New Hampshire. I'm going to stop off and see my mom in New Jersey. And then I'm going to Huntsville for the Saha camp. It's a Southeast District USA hockey camp. I work that camp for a couple days, and then I drive back. And I drive back through Albany, New York, and I'm going to catch the Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band show in Albany on
Oh,
Monday, April 15th.
nice.
Full New Jersey guy coming out.
Oh man, that's gonna be a nightmare. Just kidding. That's wild though. That's awesome. Are you just going by yourself? You got buddies? Bringing the wife? Bringing mom?
No, I'm just going by myself. Like it's I've seen Bruce probably 10 times now. But I've never had like great seats. So these, you always get like last year I was in the nosebleeds with my kids in Foxborough, Mass. This year, I said, well, like it worked out the timing of the trip.
Yeah.
So I got floor seats. I'm like,
Oh, nice.
I'm not like not the like the pit in front, but it's
No,
I got
yeah, right.
back from there. I got a seat, and I'm pretty excited. I'm pretty
That's awesome, especially being doing it out there. Oh man, that's I am envious of you. That's sounds like it's gonna be a fun
Thanks, buddy.
show.
Absolutely. How
What
about yourself, Trev? What do you got going on these next couple weeks?
well, I mean, right now we've got so we have started our spring season up a little bit. We just got done with tryouts 2 weeks ago. Now this week we had our first practices. Not really a lot, different with the team that I have now compared to the fall. I think we've added just another player or two, but yeah, we've got a big tournament that they put on in the Chicagoland area through 200 by 85, who does like all the CCM stuff and the brick stuff. And then we got another tournament in another local one in May, but I mean, really, it's low key. One night of skills, one night of practice, and have your weekends. It's an 8-week season. That's really what it should be at most, if that at all. So can't complain. I mean, it's fun. So yeah, first week's already done, and you know, that's pretty much it, really. I mean, right now it's just that and actually getting the opportunity to watch some hockey where I don't feel like it's a drain. Like now I actually want to watch NHL hockey instead of coming home and be like, I just got home from hockey or I just got off a phone call about hockey with, some parent. So no, it's pretty much it. I mean, it's nice. So yeah, I mean,
Unfortunately, neither of our teams are making the playoffs, so unfortunately.
no, but actually I was going to ask you, bringing up New Jersey, what'd you think about the opening brawl right off the line brawl right off the puck drop last night?
Well, this year you always have these recruiting calls at night. Like I got to always have a kid I have to talk to or a Zoom call with a parent. So I scheduled at 7 o'clock last night a recruiting call. Great kid from London, Ontario. Nice, really nice family. But then all of a sudden, my sister starts blowing up my phone. My sister still lives in New Jersey. She watches every game, and she's like calling me 2 or 3 times, and I'm like, "What is going on here?" So I kind of excuse myself from the call after a little time, and then she's like, Are you watching the game? It's crazy. Mercer got kicked out. This like all this other stuff, and it was pretty wild. It was a pretty old school, but that was coming for a while.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was. I honestly, I don't care about it. Like, I mean, I'm of the opinion of let them go. I mean, was it, yeah, it's staged a little bit. Yeah, of course. Like, who you're putting out, you see who the other team's putting out. Okay, like here's your chance. Um, but I mean, there was not from the videos that I saw, there wasn't a single person sitting down in the stands, or shielding their eyes or asking for returns for their tickets. I mean, there's got to be no other greater way to start a game than just having a full-on old-fashioned line brawl. And I mean, yeah, I loved it. But I know that that's Neanderthal in me, and it's there's a segment of the hockey community that doesn't like it, and whatever, you can pound sand. I don't care. It's
I
just it's
mean,
fun.
like you said, it was a standing room only audience last night watching that, and my sister's calling me, and people are freaking out. There's a place in hockey for that, and there's a certain level of accountability amongst players that bonds a team. I think the Devils, they do like, after that playoff run last year, I was like, oh, we're on the verge, but then you can really see some of the weaknesses in the team. Like there's
Yeah.
not a lot of on the bottom six, there's not a whole lot of guys who can kind of step up to the plate in those kind of situations. And Jack Hughes takes a lot of hits. He's injured every single year. So there's some elements to the team that they need to incorporate in this offseason to get to that level where they can be a heavy team in a long playoff run. And I thought you saw a little bit of a glimpse of it last night.
No, definitely. I mean, yeah, again, a good old fashioned full on 5-on-5 Donnybrook out there. It's I mean, I don't know. I wasn't alive. Neither of us were alive in the 60s and the 70s where those things were common. So I'm enjoying them while I can now. But yeah, I mean, I think it's great for the overall team. And, I mean, Rempe's been running around and, he's 21 years old. He's doing his job that they're putting him out there for. I don't know how long he's going to be able to continue to do that job if he doesn't pick his spots a little bit better. But,
For sure.
no, I mean, good for the Devils though for standing up for themselves and not taking, any shit and coming back down, like not backing down. So,
Well, I got to divulge a story a little bit. I would, and this involves New Jersey and involves the team, and it also involves Bruce Springsteen. Okay, so
oh
this
man,
is
your diary.
so we dear diary. So we get into our last showcase of the year. We had a really tough schedule. We played 4 games in 36 hours, and my P team was. I blame Neil Ravin personally for that. It was a horrible schedule, not really conducive to play well. But the kids, we had a good week of practice. We got ready for them. We played the top team in the league, the eventual champion, the final game of the year. And they were going to dress everybody, and we're going to dress everybody, and we're going to compete. And we ended up winning the game. They only had 4 losses on the year, and one of those losses was to us. And we took the bus down to Philadelphia from New Hampshire, but I took my car because we had enough coaches on the bus, and I was able to go then see my mom in New Jersey, and it also fell around my dad's birthday. It had been 1 year since he passed.
Mm-hmm.
So I drive from Philly to New Jersey. It's about an hour 15 drive or so to my mom's house, and she wasn't home yet. So I was like, well, I'm freaking stir crazy. It was a beautiful day out, so I go for a run on the boardwalk. I ran from Spring Lake to Avon and then back, and on my headphones, a Bruce Springsteen song came on called "Wrecking Ball," which is a good song. And I just started to think about the team and think about what we just went through, and thinking about the lyrics, and it was really powerful. So I drive back to New Hampshire. We have our meeting after a little like a 2-day break, which I gave him after that showcase, and we had I put together like a presentation more or less. I showed him a picture of my neighborhood growing up, and where I was running that day, and the lyrics to the Wrecking Ball, and then I got a coffee cup, and we had a candle in the coffee cup, and I said, all the stuff we've been through this year have all been lessons. How we've got to this point. You've learned from things each day, but there's also some things that are holding you back. And what we're going to do for this next 3 weeks, some of us were never going to see each other again. This kid's going to Latvia. He's going to Prague. That kid's going to California. This is our final run. It's going to be a big wrecking ball. It's going to come in and blow this whole thing up in the next 3 weeks, but we can make the most of this next 3 weeks. And I want everybody to write down on a piece of paper, think about something that you're willing to let go of, move past from, give up, something that maybe didn't happen this year, but something that was holding you back that you want to get rid of so that you can make this next 3 weeks the most impactful 3 weeks of your hockey career for this season. And it was awesome. And some of the kids, like one of the kids said, I haven't scored a point since my grandpa died. I'm going to give that up. One kid said, I thought I should be on the EHL roster, and I didn't get that call up, and it's been bothering me since January or something like that. I'm going to burn that. I'm going to put that in that fire. I'll burn that. And it was like really, really impactful. And so I thank Bruce for that, and I thank my guys for buying in, because it was incredible. It was one of the most, in terms of your coaching, you had those moments where there may be like you think your message got across positively or negatively. That one really is something kids will talk about, and that's something that I'll remember forever.
No, I mean, that's fantastic, and that's definitely powerful. I mean, it's I know Bruce listens to the podcast, so I mean, I know he'll get out there, and I'm sure we'll see you on stage, and he's going to tell that whole story
Yep.
when you're there. But no, that's definitely powerful, and that's I'll give the kid credit, coming up and saying, "Man, I thought I was going to get called up right in front of the GM and one of the owners of the team, but hey, give him credit, but hey,
It was all honesty, and kids just put it out there. Like I was blown away. So there were some kids who like really put their heart out, and said it was awesome. It was really, really awesome. There was no like laughs or snickers. Kids just kind
yeah,
of got up. They said their piece. It was a 10, 15-second thing, and then they put it in the fire. Fire went up, and that was it. It was really cool.
no,
You know,
it's
and
awesome,
you always wait like, are these kids mature enough to handle that?
right?"
But and I took a gamble that they would be, and they 1,000% were.
No, and again, I mean, as you said earlier, like the fact that a lot of those kids are going to be or either staying or moving, moving up, like it's a fantastic group to have. And again, as we, as people listening and will hear soon, just like that mental toughness and that, all that grit and stuff, like there's a special part of like that's a huge part of the game of not even the game, but also being part of a team and being a teammate.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, do you want to introduce our guest here or?
Absolutely. Well, that's a great segue by Trevor right into our interview subject for the day. His name is Kevin Willis. He's a PhD. He's worked with Sal Miller, who's one of the foremost sports psychologists in the hockey industry. Kevin has been on NHL Network. He's been on uh, a variety of podcasts and talk shows discussing his foundational beliefs in sports psychology in the game of hockey. He's come out with a new book called Hockey Grit, Grind and Mind, your playbook for increasing toughness, focus, drive, resilience, confidence, and consistency in today's game. And we turn it over to Kevin right now. We'll jump right in because Trevor's recording.
Okay.
So we have on with us Kevin Willis. Kevin Willis is actively involved in the hockey industry. He's written a couple different books. He's worked with Saul Miller. Saul Miller is one of the earliest mental health coaching in terms of hockey development. And I wrote a book called Hockey Tough. Kevin has recently come out with Hockey Grit, Grind, and Mind. It's an excellent book and highly recommended for any hockey coaches and players who are looking to strengthen their game between the years. So, Kevin, thank you for joining us.
You got it.
Now, Kevin, my first question for you, this book was written in 2019. I love the early chapters you have on grit and developing that in your players. What have you seen over the last couple years post-COVID with young athletes?
Well, I'll be honest, I think it got off to a slow start coming out of COVID. I saw a lot of guys not only physically sort of out of shape, but mentally sort of out of shape. And, that's understandable. It was a crazy, crazy time. So, right now, I've been watching some incredible playoff hockey. The teams appear to be back playing as good as ever. I've seen some, I've watched the Frozen Four this past week and looking forward to, the wrapping it up. But the level of compete, the level of resilience is there, and that's what I love to see. And you don't always see it throughout the season. It comes in spits and spurts, but I'm telling you right now with playoff, you've seen everybody dial in. You see people really reaching deep. And coming up with some really, really good games. My thing, and I didn't talk as much about it in the book, but for me, it's all about compete level. And what I'm finding is that the more I talk about compete level, it incorporates so many of the other mental skills that we talk about, the focus and the resilience and all that kind of stuff. But players can really identify with what we mean when we say compete. And so for me, focusing on that piece of it has really helped hammer it home for folks. And so I'm definitely seeing some really good results right now.
That's great. Yeah, I would agree with you. I think COVID was that 2020-21 season was really tough, and then there was an adjustment phase in I'd say 21, 22, 22, 23. But this year has been in many ways a return to normalcy. I've seen out of a lot of young players, like they're getting back to focusing on the right things as being part of a team, and I'm seeing a lot of good success. One thing actually I really liked about towards the end of your book, um, your emphasis on enthusiasm.
Yeah.
You see so many young coaches, and for whatever reason, everybody wants to be that Bill Belichick, stoic behind the bench, or
Yeah.
you want to see that like that hard edge coach who's like really tough on kids. But you place a great deal of emphasis on having enthusiasm and instilling that passion for the game. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, the thing I love about enthusiasm is anybody can bring it at any time, right? It's nothing you have to train. Yes, it's a little bit tied into personality and ego and all that kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, anybody at any time can really dial up that passion, that enthusiasm for playing. You know who I got it from is just watching Ovechkin play in his early career, and he's still a really excitable guy. But he was one of the guys that I've just never seen guys have so much fun. And he got made fun of a lot, because it was sort of breaking the mold of, you score a goal, you don't celebrate too much, and he's doing all kinds of crazy stuff and jumping on his teammates and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm thinking that they're on the bench. They need to bring something more than just, that skill and all the things they've been training. And I'm just saying, that you dial up enthusiasm, that's dialing up that passion and that energy, and it translates into compete level, it translates into energy, it translates into, enhancing skills. And so, if I can share with folks how important it is to just be in love with this game and be in love with every shift and so grateful and so thankful and just so willing to put it all out there, you don't see it all the time. Now, here's the funny thing. It ties into your first question, is the idea that coming out of COVID, a lot of players, they weren't sure what was going to happen. And, am I going to get my game back and all that kind of stuff. So you look at maybe part of what's happening right now is people just really appreciate having the game back and having the teams back and being able to really get back on track with my dreams of being a professional hockey player. And so, yeah. And coaches too, right? Coaches too. And fortunately, I'm seeing a turnover in coaches. And so the old school coaches that are, like you mentioned, stoic and sort of gel and looking all grum and never happy about anything. You see guys now jumping up and down and excited. And some of the young coaches right now, it brings me hope that translation of the excitement, the passion, and the enthusiasm for playing is going to be passed right down to the players, and the players feel very comfortable letting it show.
I couldn't agree more. There was always like a, well, I'm thinking of the proper term, but it was always like a misconception that if you're not serious, if you're showing too much energy and enthusiasm behind the bench, it means you're not serious. And I totally disagree with that. I remember the Devils had a great playoff run in 1988 where they brought in Jim Schoenfeld at the end of the year.
Oh, yeah.
And he was a really fiery guy and was really a young coach at the time. And that's what all the players said, that, that brought them a tremendous amount of energy. And they went like 7-0 or something like that in the last couple games, qualified on the last day. They went to the conference finals that year. And it's taken a while for all the other coaches to get on board with that. But I certainly remember that when I was growing up, that how passionate he was.
Yeah, no, and it's fun to watch too. You want to see the guys, celebrating, and you do see it in hockey. All the guys come together, everybody celebrates. It's a team thing, which I love. And I'm not talking about so much enthusiasm that, like in football and NFL, to me, some of the celebrations and stuff like that is just, it's show, right? It's just getting noticed. It's not really true emotion. It's just, oh, can I get the camera to sit on me, right? But some of this stuff that you're seeing in hockey nowadays is just pure, just excitement and joy. And what's this supposed to be about anyways, right? It's a game. We might as well have fun playing it, right?
Absolutely. What you've had a lengthy career and a ton of personal success with regards to players, but what is one example of a player who's really kind of bought in and it's totally changed their game in terms of that mental makeup, in terms of developing that mental toughness? What's one really great example that you could kind of share with the people listening at home?
I've worked with this player for a couple of years, and what I love about him so much is he's got good skill, right? And it's ready to be tapped. He's 14 when I started working with him. He's coming on 16 now, coming out of started in AA, coming out of a U16 AAA season, did great, top 3 in scoring. Unfortunately, they got knocked out of the playoffs early, and so he's done, sadly. But the transformation is funny because I just talked to him the other day, and one of the things he said after this talk with his coach at the end of the season was, one of the things that was so impressive is how resilient he was. That no matter what happened, no matter, coach lit him up about this or that, or, you got to be better, and pushing them and high expectations and all that kind of stuff. And he just was so even keel. And that was his Achilles heel before, right? You get on him, he just breaks down, and it's like game over for him. So for him, and what I told him, the thing that I was so impressed is that these things that we learn, these skills that we learn, we got to practice them, right? These aren't like, oh, now I know how to do it, right? Name a skill in hockey that you can learn and now you're great at it. And so, no, he bought into the idea that I got to practice this. I got to remember to use this in games. I have to have my journal. I have to, go through my pregame routine, but including this mental side where I'm thinking about what am I going to do when this happens, right? How am I going to respond? What are my tools that I'm going to lean into? And for him, it's becoming who he is, not something he does, but it's part of his identity as a player, is that when bad things happen, I am cool as a cucumber. I'm going to keep moving forward, because the thing I always preach is, people don't rise to the occasion. What happens is they're able to maintain a high level while everybody else falls away. So under that pressure, under those tough situations, you don't see guys step up. You see guys being as good as they can be, like normal, while everybody else falls away. And he's a great example of that. I just love what I'm seeing in him. And like I said, he's only 16, right? He's got so much future ahead of him. And that's what I really love working with the young players. I'm not saying I don't like working with pros and those guys too, but for that, it's just fine tuning, right? It's just sort of fine tuning and polishing and stuff like that. But for these guys, we truly are installing tools that will change who they are, because now I have the tools. I am the tough player. I'm not just being a tough player, and that to me is night and day.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I don't want to give away too much from the book. I definitely encourage everyone to pick up Kevin Willis's Hockey Grit, Grind in Mind. But before we segue to Trevor, what do you got for Coach Kevin?
Oh yeah, again, Coach, I greatly appreciate you coming on here and working with us. And I know you got a busy schedule, so we don't want to take up too much of your time. But I'm curious what it looks like. Let's go back to that 16-year-old player right now. So I'm assuming you do more. Well, yeah, I'm not going to assume anything. Let's put it this way. What does it look like for that player working with you from regular season and then into the off season?
Yeah, that's a good example. That's why I was talking to him. I was finding out what he's going to be doing and how can we touch base throughout the off season. And, it used to be that you could shut it down and just go, live a regular life and then fire it back up at the start of next season. But we know that's not, that's not possible anymore, because everybody's working so hard. But the other side of it is that you can't be pushing so hard during the off season that by the time you start the next season, you're wore out. You don't even feel like you got a break. So that's what we do. We just sort of plug in, it's called periodization when you're looking at physical development, but there's a piece of that when it comes to the mental side too. So I'm like asking, okay, when are we going to shut down? When are we going to take a couple of weeks off? Well, how's this camp rolling into this camp? What are we doing to stay nice and tight, so that when we go into that camp, you're ready and you're not sort of finding your legs in the first 2 days and you only got 3 days left, right? So we talked about that, and he has his calendar out, and we're looking at days, and we're sort of mapping it out, because for me, he became a really disciplined, habits driven guy. And so in the off season, I don't want that to go away. Just like if you stop working out, you lose muscle mass, you're not going to be quick and as agile and all that kind of stuff. Same thing happens right there between your ears, right? You're not as focused, you're not able to bounce back as quick. So it's that periodization where I need you to be optimal, then we're going to go ahead and rest for a little while, and then I need you to be optimal again. I learned that from Olympic athletes, because the way they've got to work, and they've got to be absolutely peak performance at a very specific time in their season, and a lot of it is not competition, it's just training. But with hockey guys, you can find that those highs and lows, and I just want them to be ready. I don't want them to come in sluggish, and at the same time, I don't want them to be burned out.
No, that makes a ton of sense. And I mean, I guess that's no different than any other type of, training that we do, off ice, as you already
Absolutely.
alluded to.
Yep.
What do you, as a sports psychologist, correct? Performance. We've recently had a discussion with another group, person, in regards to, being working in sports science, like more or less like the mental side. What are your thoughts on, you know, someone who's gone to school compared to someone who's not gone to school for that type of training? Like if outside of going to you, of course, if there's a person listening that, hey, you know what, I'm looking for, someone to work with me on my mental toughness or my grit. What type of person should they be looking for, and who should they kind of shy away from, in your opinion?
Yeah, and that's a hard question because, I do appreciate, former players coming in and sharing their experiences of times they've had to be tough and the way that they were able to step up and all that kind of stuff. And that is inspiring, to be sure. The problem with it is sometimes, and I'm not saying this about everybody, but
Of
sometimes what will
course.
happen is that they remember it happening and they know that they got through it, but they're not exactly sure how. They don't really know what they did to get through it. They did, but they don't,
Right.
and because they don't know, they can't teach it, right? And that's one of my biggest struggles is that I always use this example. I think I use it in the book, is that if a player is struggling on the boards, right, battling, you can train skill, you can get stronger, you can talk about angles and techniques for stick position and where to lean and all that kind of stuff, bent legs, all that. I mean, that's all physical, right? And we can
Right.
train the crap out of that. But what happens if that player doesn't believe he can win that battle? Right. So if we don't, and it's not enough just to say, get in there and do it. Come on, you can do it. You got this. Right. Well,
Right.
you've trained me. I'm strong. I've got all the skills and all the little tricks of the trade. But guess what? I still don't think I'm going to win that battle. And they don't. Right. You
Right.
always move in the direction of your thoughts and they think they're not going to win. And guess what? They don't win. So how do we train that? How do we train that piece? And not everybody knows that. Just because they've experienced it, they don't necessarily know how to teach it. Now, I will say there are some ex-pros and guys that have been in the game for a long time who are so hungry and so open to listen and to learn. And that's one of my favorite things to do, is to work with them, right? Because
Right.
I can only work with so many players at a time. If I can work with a coach who's working with a whole team, boom, I got 20 guys under me that this guy is so passionate about, and they're behind the bench every single game. I'm not, right? I'm not behind them, tapping the guys on the shoulder, giving them high fives when they pull it out, and sort of picking them up when they're down. So
Right.
working with the coaches, working with any mental game, somebody who knows and appreciates how important that mental side of the game is. I love working with them. And that's something that I'm trying to expand on. I'm working with right now, I'm working with a pro, and he wants to sort of expand that. And fortunately, he knows everybody, right? So he can reach
That's
out and
good.
say, hey, let's, and so he has that recognition and stuff that I don't. And plus, one of the things about being a doctor, right? So being a doctor, sometimes people get this idea that I'm fixing something that's broken, right? And
Right.
that's sort of embarrassing. And what I'm seeing over the years, and it's happening more, I think it's a generational thing too, is that players are like, okay, I thank you. I will love to work with you. And whereas players in the past were like, and oh, by the way, can you just not tell anybody, right? Can you just not share this, right? Even parents will
Yeah.
come up and say, hey, everything you've done for Johnny is incredible. But, can you not say anything to the coach or to any of the players, right? And
Right.
so that for me limits my reach. But man, if I could get a coach, if I can spread that passion and the knowledge, again, there are some skills that they need to learn. They have to be open, right? Because some guys that think they've got it all figured out, because I've been there, I've done that for so many years, they're hard to teach, right? They're really hard to teach.
No,
It-
definitely.
It's it's
Go
so
ahead.
funny you say that, Kevin, because you know, when I was younger, when I was playing in high school and college, it was almost like a taboo that you had a personal trainer. It was
Yeah,
like, oh,
yeah.
you're unmotivated to work out on your own, so you got to get somebody to motivate you. That totally has changed. It's like everybody has a personal trainer or somebody that they go to for workouts or advice. And I agree with you. Like that dynamic is changing for mental health and mental coaching and sports psychology too. So, we're only a couple years away from almost all kids, I think, getting more of that input because it's so
Yeah.
valuable.
Yeah,
Well, they
and
already
I'll
got
be honest
player
with you,
agents, so
we're right on that cusp, right? When the trainers broke in, you're right. Nobody wanted to share that they had a trainer, and trainers were not a position on the team, right? Now every team has a trainer. Every single team has a
yeah.
trainer, but I can promise you, not every team has a mental game coach.
Yeah.
Some maybe like 30% have, and I'm talking about really high-end elite teams that could probably afford it if they thought it was a high enough priority, but certainly are working with players that, have so much potential to move forward. You would hate to see somebody with all the skill and all the experience and all the potential in the world fail because they could not pull it together mentally, right? They fail because they just choked. And that's so disappointing. And how many guys out there right now that went all the way through juniors or college and everything, and they're done, but they have as much skill as guys that are still in the game. The problem is they just couldn't put it together and at the right times and be, those results at the right time for these little tiny reasons. It's very few more established, older players that I work with that don't look at me and say, God damn, where were you? I needed you when I was coming up. Where were you when I was coming up? I could have been so much better if I just had known these skills. And so that's what I'm trying to do. My mission is to make mental game training mandatory. At some level, these kids need to be taught that mental side of the game. Come on, let's face it. Is this game all physical? No. Is it all mental? No. It's a mix, right? But we don't train anything in the mental side, right? Even if it was 50-50, right? I think mental game definitely carries a higher percentage to me, but I'm not going to argue. Nobody has ever said less than 50% is important wise. So why can't we just have some training for that? Mandatory training so that you can't just, skirt through it. I see guys paying ridiculous amount of money to get in front of a skills coach to work on their shot or to work on their skating, right? But then you put an offer in front of them to work with their player one-on-one, working through their mental challenges. And they're like, oh, Mike, that's so important. We'll let you know. We'll let you know.
Right.
Like, okay, well, I'll be here.
Well, the last thing I wanted to bring up is, and you brought it up earlier, and it's something that I've heard so much in my short coaching career, and I'm sure Coach Trimble's heard the same thing. You're talking about that battle along the boards, and there's always been those kids where you say, well, if they're not mentally, like they're not trying, then you've lost the battle, and it's always been a question that's always come up, and of how do you make a kid more aggressive? How do you make them tougher? Willing to go and do that, and I used to be of the philosophy that, well, some kids are just not aggressive, where I kind of turned the corner and I'm like, you know what? There's got to be a way you can make these kids a little bit more aggressive. And I guess from your side, for any coaches that are out there that have run into this situation, what type of advice would you give to that coach that they could relate to that type of player who just needs to get a little bit more in there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm so glad you asked that because that's my thrust. That's my passion right now, is the compete level of the players. And so I put together an entire program. It's a team program called the Compete Level Formula. And that's what we do. We put together a training that breaks down what it means to compete, right? And so much of it is a misunderstanding of what high compete looks like. What does that mean, right? So a coach says, I need you to compete harder. And the player's sitting there going, I am competing my butt off. I don't know what else I could do. And the coach is sitting there going, you're giving me half of what you got. And the player's going, no, I'm actually not. I'm giving you everything I've got. And so
Right.
it's just a mix. So what I do is I break down this idea of compete level for both the coaches. So I've got a coach's version and the player's version. They go through all of this training. And I also have a program throughout the season where, and I don't want to give it away because it's sort of the meat of the whole program.
No, of course not.
We're
Yeah.
actually we're tracking the increases in the compete of the players, right? Because we're doing something special during the season itself. And what happens is when you come out of that season, you got players that not only understand what it means to compete at a high level, coming right from the coach's mouth, but the coaches are saying, yeah, now you get it. That's what we need. And so teams are finishing the season stronger than what they started, and not just mentally tough, mentally tough that translates into a high compete level, right? Because take anybody with skill and you give them that relentless compete level, that's going to be a player, right? That is going to be a player. And I'll talk to any coach. They're like, dude, I can teach skills all day long. I can teach tactics and strategies all day long. I just need them to want it more than anything. I need them to want it like they want to breathe, right? And so that's what this does. This whole program breaks down this idea of compete level, and then we serve it up to the team. It's better as a team program because you're going to see the way that it all comes together within that unit. I've got another program that I just started putting together. It's called an impact player formula, and it's a very similar thing, but it's more of an individual, and it's showing players how they can train to be somebody that always is noticed, always rises to the top on their team. They are truly an impact player. And if you say that to a coach, who's your impact player? They'll name like 2 or 3 guys instantly, right? Because they know.
Right.
But the players don't, and they don't know how to get there, right? So that's the changes that I've done in training is I'm kind of putting it around an idea versus just talking about all the ingredients, right? Being focused, being tough, being aware, having a plan, all that, the stuff that the book is about, right? It's all these pieces that you got to have. But now, for what? To be a high compete player. For what? To be an impact player, right? And so that's my next strategy. That's where I'm moving to. But there's so much cool brain science out there. There's so many things that are so easy to do that players just aren't doing, that if I can slowly but surely get them to buy into that stuff, I think you're going to see another level of players. And just like trainers were years ago were really sparse and scarce, I think you're going to see we're right on the cusp of every team having a mental game coach, every team having a mental game program, right? Nothing is left to chance. And that's great at the higher levels. But how do we make sure that those players are ready? Because if they're just starting when they get up to those high levels, then they got a lot of work to do, because man, it is competitive, right? It is the hardest hockey they're ever going to play. And the problem is they're in a situation that if you're not good enough, you're gone. You're done, right? There's no other avenue for you. When you're young, there are other teams, there's other levels. You can still do things, right? So if I can start there and it's consistent what they're hearing when they get to the higher levels, then I think you're going to see a transformation of the idea of being mentally tough.
Well, Coach, where can we find that program? I figure I would love to know.
Yeah, it's at thecompleteplayer.com, the complete player, all one word.com. And so what I've got is, because I do it for teams, what I would ask somebody to do is jump in there. There's a link where they can set up a call with me. I'll break it down. And if that's something that they want to take a look at, then we roll it out next season. It's cool because we can roll it out sort of, towards the end of the off season. And so by the time that you're hitting the ground running at the beginning of the season, which the players are, they're learning a lot, they're experiencing a lot and all that kind of stuff. If this is already sort of soaked in a little bit, then you get right into the meat of it. And like I said, it is a team program. There are things that coaches have to do. I have to have somebody that owns it from the coach's side. And so it's those things I got to work out. But yeah, go to thecompleteplayer.com. You can go and hook up a call with me. There's a link. You can just set up a call and we'll jump on the phone and we'll talk about it and we'll get it rolling. It is super, super important. And I think that it's maybe one of the most important things I've done.
It's awesome.
That's awesome. That's phenomenal. Thank you, Coach Kevin, once again for coming on. Hockey fans, if you haven't picked up Hockey Grit, Grind, and Mind by Kevin Willis, it's a must read for any hockey coach, player, or parent involved in the game. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks, boys. Appreciate it.
All right. So thanks again, Kevin, for coming on. We really appreciate it. I think there's a lot of information that you shared with coaches, players, and parents that can make a big difference in their games. Trevor, what are some of the things that you really took from that interview?
Again, as Coach Trimble said, we appreciate Kevin your time. We definitely know that it's valuable. Come on our show and talk with us. Honestly, I mean, I feel like that was another interview that we could have gone for like hours on end, like multiple episodes, just because he's just full of so much knowledge, especially in areas that we don't think about. And again, like that was like the question I asked and about, how do we, it's like one of the things that I hear so much from parents, like, oh, this kid's not aggressive or that kid's our team's not aggressive. And it's like, well, okay, how do you I used to think like, okay, a kid, you're either born with it or you're not.
Yeah.
And I still think a little bit of that's true, but I still think that we can try and manufacture some of that within those players, inspire them to, do this or that. So, and again, like he gave us a, solid answer on that, throughout the whole interview. But it's definitely one of those things where, it's part of the game that we don't think about. And again, where he said mental skills coach, you know, it's, I agree with him. I think that's one of the things that we will be seeing within clubs from youth level all the way up shortly. Maybe not so much at the younger ages so much, because those kids are still, their minds are still developing. And I think there's probably be some things that we might, be able to incorporate because obviously, I mean, we want to make sure we're molding, these minds in the right way. But um, I could definitely, I mean, my season 2 years ago when I had, the midget team that won 2 games, I would have definitely have loved to have had some type of mental skills coach there to, help kind of like, hey, okay, this is what we can do or try to do. So, um, again, as I said, it was a great, hearing all the stuff that he had. And like I said, I mean, that could have gone on for hours on end, just on different topics alone. So, but yeah, I mean, I really think that that's going to be one of the next big things for teams to incorporate is, okay, here you're going to have this week, you're going to have, doctor or so coach so and so come in and he's going to work with you guys on this or that. What are your thoughts, coach?
Well, I agree with you 1,000%, Trevor. And I think that there's also even like he talked about his website and some integrated platforms that you can use within your teams that are initiated by a coach and getting his players on that platform that I think could be really helpful too. Like, if you have an app that the team uses and they can share that kind of information or rate themselves or give question and answer sessions, there's a lot of stuff you can probably do with technology that could really make that easier for instead of just an in-person consultation. The one I thought your question, Trevor, was awesome. Like, you see so many kids like that there's a natural, maybe a heightened level of testosterone, and they are super competitive. And there is going to be those genetic differences in certain kids, but
Right.
for those kids that love the game and have a passion for the game, but might be a little timid or might not be that, that overly aggressive, how can we teach those kids? And I thought that was a great question. And like, I think there's probably some tools that, he within his, his books and his writings and his website, you can probably find out more about that. But in your opinion, Trevor, what have you seen been really effective for kind of getting that competitive edge out in players?
I mean, I just like to sit there on the bench and just yell at kids, and then see what happens,
For sure. For
fight
sure.
or flight. No, I'm just kidding. No, I mean, in those situations, I think it's more or less like, again, I think there's a different level of, today's game. It's not, you can still be an aggressive player and you don't have to be like a guy who's a heavy hitter or you have to, be going. I mean, we want you to go 100%, but you don't have to be going in looking to just like seek and destroy. Like those days are pretty much almost gone. So it's finding a way that those kids can still be aggressive and contribute. And whether that's just being good with their stick, being the first guy on the puck and, the offensive zone. Um, like, or, first forechecker, I meant to say, just having a, good puck, stick placement on the puck to try and force action. Other things that we've tried to do is just kind of put players in those scenarios where we know they struggle a little bit. But we don't want to expose them to the full thing like right away. It's not like sink or swim. I want the player to kind of be exposed and slowly build that up like that. Okay, so we did this drill that involves this type of angling. Okay, now we're going to do this drill where it's going to be this kind of, battling that we take from that angling. So I like to kind of like ramp things up that way. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I do like to put players in situations where they're not always comfortable. But eventually they're going to keep getting beat, and our jobs as coaches is we have to teach them how to, how to step up to those in those times, how they can be aggressive, how they can do it. So, again, I mean, it used to be okay, everybody, let's like line up and do the gauntlet drill. Well, you got guys who are, especially like Bantams and one of those both ages, kids different sizes and different heights. Like, the kids that are small who don't have that, like, I want to crush somebody, like they're not going to get anything out of that. So it's like, let's
Yeah.
build it up so that they
If
do
anything, they'll
eventually.
probably get terrified.
Right. I mean, again, that's not what we want to do. I mean, no kid wants to come back to the bench and get yelled at every game because the coach is sitting there saying like you're not digging in to the corner, like you're not getting involved in the corners, or you're just flying by. Like no kid wants that. So it's how do we, as coaches, how do we teach that? How do we train that? And I think that's something we can do through practice. And that's something that I've always tried to do through practices with those types of drills where, you ramp up to it. And you find out real quick which kids are and which kids aren't. And then you just got to remember, okay, so Timmy here, he doesn't like a lot of body contact. How can we get him so that he's more willing to accept and give body contact or whatever? So it's kind of how I've always looked at it or tried to, and that's just a lot of trial and error too. And I still, some of the times it works, sometimes it doesn't. What about you?
Yeah, I've always thought that, like, you know, I haven't been a player for a long time, but when a coach would say, like, we come in between periods and we're down 2-0 or something, and he's like, nobody's working hard in this room. We need to work harder. And I always thought that was like, he's run out of ideas. Like, it was always in my head, like, yeah, there's more to the story than this. Like, he's not looking hard enough. Like, I'm working pretty hard. I got a sweat going. I just haven't scored. Like,
Right. Right.
But there's more to the story, right? Like, so I always thought that was kind of like too convenient and too easy when coaches would say those things. I think like your analysis when you're talking about like kind of baby stepping, like putting a kid in a situation that confronts that kind of thing that they may struggle with, that kind of body contact, physicality, or one-on-one scenarios, but maybe doing it for a shorter duration against a player of equal size and ability. That's in a game-like scenario where they don't even realize they're battling like that. Probably is a great way to do it, and you can kind of build that up over the course of the year. It may take you 6 months, but you probably retain the player
Right.
instead of like scaring him off from playing. So that's probably the best way to do it.
No, and for me, it's the other thing I took away from this, that conversation was just the stuff you do off the ice. And, you know, um, as a player who, growing up, as I've already discussed, I had my own, like my mental health stuff with like anxiety and OCD and stuff. But like Coach Kevin said in the interview, like, where were you when I was growing up? Because I would have loved to have had like a sports psychologist who had been there and I could have been like, well, hey, when I'm dealing with a panic attack in the middle of a game or before a game, like, how do I get in the right, like, what type of mindset? Um, I think that's something that's really overlooked. And, um, is that something that you guys, up at the older levels, is that something you guys like talk about or work on or do anything in that nature?
Yeah, for a lot of years we had Emily Clement, who we had on the podcast.
Yep.
She worked with the teams. We had a gentleman named Dave Pollock. He's worked with the teams for a number of years. So like I'm fully on board with that kind of information. Dave actually, he had a heart attack this year. Really had a tough bout physically, so we weren't able to have him in with the team as much this year. But we want to get back to that in the future because, like he said, it's critical because there's a lot of things kids won't divulge to me or their
Right.
parents. That getting a third party involved who knows how to pick up on the signs and knows how to like communicate at their level, it opens up Pandora's box, which in a positive way.
Right. No, absolutely. And it's one of those things where nowadays with just so much pressure on kids and, not even, and again, I'm not even talking like even 18, okay, they're like 19, 20-year olds. Like there's just so much pressure on them to make sure you're picking the right team, or maybe you're going to go to the right school, or, you're dating the right person, or, you break up with your girlfriend, or it's your fault, or it's, my family's all the way across. Like there's just so much that goes into it. I know that's like a little bit of more mental health stuff too, but I mean, just I've been scratched the last 3 games. Like, how do I frame this so that I'm a good, player, but also a good teammate, and because there's kids that we've seen all the time. Like, oh, okay, I'm not playing tonight. Well, all right. Well, what am I? I'm going to go sit up in the stands and do what? Yeah, right. Okay, see you later. And those guys don't stick around too much.
Yeah,
So
and I would say like you said, we had a guest on a podcast a couple weeks ago, and he was trying to it was like throwing the kitchen sink. We got the advisor, we got the parent, we got the coach, we got the mental health guy, we got trainer here, we got a best friend here, we got his
right,
mechanic talking about it was the proverbial kitchen sink.
right,
And I would say that when you got that many people barking at you, I don't know if that's the right way to do it. But if you have a guy like Kevin or a sports psychologist who's a trained professional and you need help, that's who you go to. That's who
right.
you go to. Talking to your coach, that can be hit or miss too if you got a dink as a coach.
Yeah,
you know?
no, for sure.
But
I mean, yeah,
yeah, but then obviously your parents too. But I think you
Mike
got to find
Bagpack. Oh,
you got to
perfect
find
example.
good, valuable, trusted resources, and that's where professionalism matters.
No, right. And I think it's so much of when you hear the word tough and grit, you think of those guys that are just like chomping at the bit, like just bowling ball through guys or, taking the puck to the net, this and that. When in reality, like, it's also just like being able to play and like battle for that adversity. And you don't have to be, a Matt Rempe type of fucking player who's just reckless as can be. You can be like that doesn't apply also to those types of players. Like you can be a, you know, Patrick Kane type player or a Jack Eichel type player or a, Jack Hughes type player who is still tough, like, who
Definitely.
has that grit. Like it just doesn't mean like sandpaper, piss and vinegar, all this and that. Like the meaning is just, I think that's one thing that's lost on a lot of people at times is
I,
like,
I agree with you.
he's not tough. Well, why isn't he tough? Like, what do you mean he's not tough? He won't, why doesn't he battle? Like, again, there's always reasons to something, and it's more or less, as a famous I guess you would say philosopher once said, it's like an onion. It's got all these layers. And you just got to keep peeling those layers back, and eventually you'll figure it out, and you try and work through it. And maybe you can. Maybe sometimes it is. You got to call on the professional, but yeah, I mean I thought it was, again, we could have spent probably 2, 3, 4 hours just talking way too much, asking way too many questions. That would have probably drove Coach Kevin crazy, but
Well, that brings up a good thing, Trevor. You talked about some players. We didn't plan to do a 5 minutes today, but how about we do three players, three players who we've are good examples of mentally tough players that we've witnessed. That could be like NHL players, who everybody's familiar with, or maybe not familiar with, but and then maybe give a couple reasons why. You want to go first, or want me to go first?
I mean, it's
I,
tough
I,
because I
I'm
I
putting
just
you on the spot.
no, it's not even that. I mean, I could think of a couple. I mean, yeah, I'll go first. So, I mean, it's the very first one I could probably think of. I mean, I got a couple. The first one I would probably though say is a guy like Mario Lemieux. Okay,
Yeah. Oh,
Mario
for
Lemieux.
sure.
I mean, on the ice, he got beat up quite a bit. And again, he had no. I mean, not that he didn't also have a stick of his own that he wasn't afraid to use at times. Um, but here's a guy who got hacked and whacked throughout his entire career, and yeah, he
Back
complained.
issues, all
Yeah,
sorts of stuff.
back. Yeah, I mean, he complained a little bit. I'm not going to say he didn't, but that being said, in probably the middle of his career, he gets diagnosed with what, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Sorry, God, it's
Yeah.
been.
No,
I
you got
mean,
it.
yeah. Thanks. I've been working on it. Um, like that's serious. Like, and here's a guy who battles through that. And again, you don't know if he's got cancer. Like it's you never know. And
For sure.
he beats it. It goes in it's remission. It hasn't come back ever since. And he comes back and like he comes back to the game. Like it was almost like he had never left. And he retired
Yeah.
for what, 2 years, I think. I mean, he got inducted into the Hall of Fame, the second fastest player, I want to say, next to Wayne Gretzky, who after he hung up his skates, literally like Batman was like, "Hey, just so you know, you're in the Hall of Fame. We're gonna tell them in 5 minutes." But
Yeah.
like no, like
Yeah.
Lemieux literally when he was like one of the only players that I think maybe Gordie Howe too to come out of retirement and play. He played up until what,
Played with
2008,
Crosby.
2009? Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, to me, there's a guy who's like, he's seen what, his life almost disappear like right in front of him. Never see his, like, have his kids see him play. I mean, not even that, not even think about playing, but lose his life possibly to an illness that,
For sure.
and he's able to
Well, that's a
battle
great one. I
through it.
forgot about that. That's a
Yeah.
great
I
one.
mean, he's able to battle through that and he's able to push through and he comes back, and I think he was almost averaging like 2.5 points per game. And this was in like the late,
He led the league in scoring for sure.
yeah. And he only
That's
played
yeah,
like 40 games that year or something. Like it was, or 50, like it was insane. It was
totally.
disgusting. So I would say that would probably be one player. That would be my first one I could think of.
Well, first player I'm going to put up on my list would be Martin Brodeur.
Okay.
Brodeur played forever, played almost every game. Some seasons where he playing 70, almost 80 games.
I think he
But
played
they always
80.
said about, I know it's crazy, but they always said about Brodeur, he's completely unflappable, right? He could let in a bad goal. He let in some bad, terrible goals in the finals, like because he was so active playing the puck.
Right.
But it was like whatever. I'll let it in. I'll stop the next one.
Yeah.
Completely like just even keeled. Didn't matter. Obviously, super competitive. You don't play for 25 years and win 3 cups without being a competitive person. But he was very even keeled. That they always said that about him. So I would say Martin Brodeur is on my list. What do you got for two,
Definitely.
Trev?
I mean, I like Brodeur. It's not much. Yeah, I'm a Hasek guy, but it doesn't matter. Um, all right. So, I mean, now this is going to be a kind of the same type of thing. And again, this is a little bit off the ice, but also on the ice. I'm going to say actually an ex-Devil himself, Alex McGinley.
Okay. I like to hear
So,
this one.
so the reason being is that those of you who remember, but those of you who don't and are not old enough, McGillney was one of the first. I want to say he was the first Russian to defect. So not be
Yep.
let go by the USSR, right, and the Soviet Union, but to actually defect and leave. And there was a bunch of, threats against him. I mean, he's worried about the KGB the entire time. And he comes over in North America and he's playing for Buffalo.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. And here's the guy. He's what, like 19, maybe 20 tops when he came in the league, right? There's no way that I could at 19 or 20 have left my quote unquote home country, my entire everything I had behind and go into a league and you're Russian. Back then at that time, people still were not huge fans of Russians in North America. Um, so you're getting it from players, okay, on the ice. Off the ice, you've got people coming after you. Not coming after you, but maybe they were. I don't even. Nobody knows. We'll never know about that. But I'm not getting into crazy conspiracy theories here. But he's worried about KGB. He's worried about his family. He's worried about himself. And he goes out, and I want to say at the time he had what, like, put up the rookie record for most goals in the season or something. Like,
He
I
was
mean, I know.
unreal.
I mean, one of the first 2 seasons, he had 76 goals.
Yes.
Like, and again, this is all still every day knowing what's going on in your home country. That's like leaving America. And fuck, I'm not going to go down that road. This will turn into a different type of podcast. But you're like literally leaving everything behind, everybody and it's not like he came over here and I don't even know who he had really to talk to. So again, off like there's a resilience where you got to play through that stuff too on the ice. You're getting hacked and whacked just because of your nationality, like because of that stuff, like, and he took it and he played and he fought back. Like I'm not gonna sit here and say he didn't, but he played through it and you know, outside of injuries, I mean, he's definitely up there in one of the top five, if not even in the top three greatest Russian players of all time. So I would say number two for me is Alexander McGivney.
That's a great one, Trevor. And I kind of you sometimes forget about that transition from him for him to the NHL. He was on. I think he was left at like at the World Junior Championships, like
Yep.
snuck out of a hotel and defected. and it was still the Soviet bloc. So like, his family could have been threatened every day by the KGB. And like, you're totally right, and it is a crime that he is not in the Hall of Fame. That Alex McGillney is a Hall of Fame player.
I don't know
Like you
how.
said, was an unreal talent, but also won a Stanley Cup, super productive, all-star level player. Like he's a Hall of Famer.
And again, you take out the injuries alone, and we know he had some. But again, coming into the league, 76 goals. Yeah, okay, he was probably, I think, playing between, or he was between.
He
He
had
wasn't between.
LaFontaine with him.
Yeah, LaFontaine. Yeah, but still, like even when he went away, like when he went to Vancouver, he was still a big time player. Like he went to the Devils, he was still a big time player. Like I agree, he
Definitely,
should be in the Hall of Fame. Like that's a travesty on its
it's a
own.
travesty for sure. All
Who do you
right,
got,
my
Coach?
player number 2 is Mr. Game 7, Justin Williams.
All right.
So one of the things that Kevin said was about it always looks like players elevate their games, but it's really like players are prepared mentally and they don't elevate their games, just everybody else dips. And Justin Williams, a multi-time Stanley Cup winner, he's scored a point in every single game 7 that he's played in the NHL. Played for almost 20 years with
Yeah.
Carolina and LA and a bunch of other teams. So I would say him. If a player can do that so consistently, keep their high level of play in those really difficult playoff win at all cost scenarios, you got to have something between the ears.
Oh, for sure. He's it's amazing how well he was, and overall as a player, and he's probably somebody who another underrated player who I don't know if he's Hall of Fame worthy. I think he's probably damn near close, but McGillney's before him, but for sure,
Yes,
just his style of play and just how clutch he was. Like that's the definition of clutch right there. Like
absolutely.
I would hate to have to play that many game sevens too. Just knowing that you're either losing the league championship or getting knocked out. Like, God, that's what it probably feels like to be a Maple Leaf. Um, all right, number 3 here, man. There's a lot of different ways you could go about it. You could go not about it, but uh, do I want to go recent? Do I want to go in the past? Let's see here. I already did. So I did what
You got Lemieux and McGillney.
I did the medical. I did the outside of the with the world stuff. I'm gonna just go with size factor in general. I'm gonna say here's a name that I'm sure half the people, well, most people listening will probably know because they're our age or older. Um, let's go with we'll go with Cliff Ronning. We'll go with Cliff Ronning.
Cliff Ronning, 5'7".
And there you go. And you could put him together with like Brian Giantas or even like Paul Correa's, those types of players there. Um, Cliff Ronning. My favorite story about Cliff Ronning is, he's 5'7", but he was one of his best friends growing up. Ended up because if you remember back on Sega Genesis, he was like next to Roenick and Gretzky, like one of the best players to play as on the NHL 94. Well,
Yep.
the story behind it is Cliff Ronning, one of his, I guess, childhood best friends, ended up working on the game. And he purposely jacked up all of his stats, like attributes. So, and no one, unbeknownst to like everybody else, who's just like, oh, what is this thing? It's Sega Genesis. Okay. So that's why Cliff Ronning was like one of the best players you could play as.
I
But
didn't know that. That's
yeah,
funny.
but all 5'7" of them. This is a guy who he's played well over 1,000 games. Guy who was probably maybe half a point a game. Great two-way centerman. Again, 5'7" playing.
I bet you if we looked him up, he probably got 700-800 NHL points. I bet you he does because he had
Yeah,
multiple seasons where he had 80 plus in a year, and he played on some good teams.
for sure. I guess at the end of the day, it's back in those times like where it was tough being a small player. Like again, everybody wanted at that time, everybody wanted the next Lemieux, the next Lindroses. Everybody's drafting 6'3", 6'4", 6'5". And it didn't matter if you could or couldn't play. Like if you had size, you were playing. And a guy like him, he wasn't he was resilient. He was tough to play against, but he didn't take a lot of penalties either. Like, I don't think I could probably go on YouTube maybe, but I don't think he's got that many like even fighting majors back then where I could have been like, oh yeah, here in the same boat I got Theo Fleury, who that's like the other end of the spectrum. But I mean, I would definitely say Cliff Ronning just because of the perfect player in today's NHL because they just respect his ability more. So, yeah, I mean, I know I probably just stole two other ones that you probably could have used. So sorry about that, coach. But
It's all good.
hopefully
It's
you
all
got
good.
somebody else for number. I'm sure you do. Number 3 for you.
Well, there was a lot of guys I was spinning around. I had, Messier he was on my brain a
Yep.
little bit. Martin St. Louis, I was thinking about.
Oh, that's another good one.
It's a good one. Playing all those years in the minor leagues before really getting a chance.
Absolutely.
But the one I'm going to go with is Gary Roberts.
Okay.
Gary
Yep.
Roberts won a Stanley Cup with the Calgary Flames in 1988. And then he suffered a debilitating neck injury, like broke his neck. They said he was never going to play again, took an entire year off. And then he just gradually started to feel a little better. He actually was like, I remember listening on another podcast. He was like working in insurance or something like that, like totally out of the game. It might have been multiple years where he was out of the game, but he had that passion, that love and enthusiasm to give it another try, even through like that extremely significant injury. And then he went on to, he's another guy who's got close to 1,000 points and played. After that, he played like another 15 years. I mean, he played for Toronto after that. Like he played all in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I think he was at mid 2000s is when he eventually retired. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and that neck injury was like 92, 93, something like pretty relatively early in his story, and he just battled through it. And a remarkable story. I'm not giving the full details because I don't know the full details.
No, yeah,
it was a neck injury that like.
Oh no,
it
was severe.
You can never play again. Yeah.
Well, and that's why when he retired, he got into the fitness, like all that training and stuff, because that's what he attributes to saving his life, or not his life, but maybe his life, but his game was that he got into lifting weights, he got into nutrition, he got into like all the stretching and all the stuff that players just do now naturally that back then they're like, oh yeah, we'll see a training camp to get ready. He was just working almost year round.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a great one. Definitely. And then I think a lot of the people we talk about, definitely they battled, the one key thing is they battled adversity in some way. And I think, every player in some way or another eventually battles through their own adversity, and the ones who typically make it, to the, I don't think there's many guys at a top level who did face adversity and decided to go the other way instead of going at it.
Well, that before we close tonight, that brings up a thing we got to talk about a little bit on the Twitter universe and it talks about like how some guys have adversity, some guys don't have adversity. The Zach Hyman thing.
Okay. No, God.
Right? Like, I mean, oh man, the guys in the NHL, like you said, everybody battles adversity at all sorts of different parts. You may have been born into a wealthy family.
I tried to forget this.
But you've got, playing in the NHL, guess what? That ain't easy, bro.
No, man. Andrew Berkshire. When I saw that tweet come across, like the video of it, first of all, I was like, what is wrong with this guy? Like, okay, yes. You know what? Like Patrick Kane, like the stories we've heard I've heard is that his dad, paid for him to play on all these teams, but he also like covered the entire team's fee to play. It's like he was like on all these different teams and he'd go from one game to another, like his dad had, it's no doubt like Patrick Kane Sr. owned a bunch of like car lots, and he was a car company, like selling cars. He made a fortune, and it was okay. Patrick Kane grew up as a rich kid, like okay, that's fine, but they gotta still like it's not like it's just handed to them. And there's like I'm not trying to take away anything more from Zach Hyman by talking about Patrick Kane, but like yeah, hockey is a wealthy sport for sure. Like it takes a lot of money, and a lot of that goes into how much it costs for ice, how much it costs for, the staff, the season, all those things. But to when I saw that, it was totally fucking diminishing everything Zach Hyman.
Definitely.
Like there was, like I don't give a shit what he says. Like what his original point was, like, oh, hockey's got a wealth issue, or like it's a, what was a better term for it? It's got a not a wealth, but a, like a privilege. Like it's like a privilege issue. It's like, okay, well, there's one way you could say that, but what you're trying to say does not correlate with fucking Zach Hyman whatsoever. Like, okay, yeah, Zach Hyman, yeah, they made a lot of, his parents made a lot of money. Yeah. Oh, wow. He still has to do the fucking work. And yeah, he got those, like got those opportunities. But for every fucking Zach Hyman, there's 1,000 other guys who had the same exact opportunities and never made it. Fucking
Absolutely.
past. They're playing beer league, and that was like the furthest they ever got. Like,
Yeah.
Zach Hyman, when he went to, like, I want to say he did 2 extra years of juniors. Like it wasn't like 18 straight to Michigan State. He had 2 years of that. And then it was Michigan State or Michigan.
I'm not sure.
I want to say it was Michigan State. Either way, he went to, NCAA. He did 4 full years. And in those first like 3 years, he wasn't even close to being a point per game. And finally his senior year, he's a point per game guy. And yeah, he got drafted, and he didn't get drafted because mom and dad fucking paid all this money for him. Like, oh, dad owned, a scouting company like that. Do you think scouts are that, like, teams are that dumb? Like, come on.
Yeah.
I thought that was like, that's a guy who battled through adversity playing, having the money. Like that's adversity. Like everybody thinks, oh, he's just getting a cakewalk. He's never had to work a hard job or work hard for anything. Like, it's, again, Michigan State, he wasn't handed anything. It wasn't like he was brought in 18. So, and then he plays in the minors, and then he comes up through Toronto, and you know what? He's got a great team. Yeah. Is he riding shotgun next to Matthews? And this year, like McDavid? For sure. Like, come on. I mean, is it the Rob Brown effect? I want to go that far. Like, it's not like, where he's riding Mario Lemieux, but I mean, he's put in the work, and yeah, he scores all of his goals in front of the net. But you know what? They're not fucking easy goals. Last time I checked, you want to talk about battling through adversity? That if you want to, if you don't want to face any adversity on the ice, stay away from the middle, because that's
stay outside the dots.
But when I saw that, I was just, yeah, I was on. I was that. I went unhinged on that one. I was just like, are you that dense?
Yeah, no, right? It's crazy. And like, I mean, there's a certain point where maybe at the U10, 11, 12, 14, 16, maybe where that privilege can get you some favors, but there's not an NHL scout who's going to put his reputation and job on the line just because the kids are a wealthy family. That's not going to happen.
No.
And like you said, like with Patrick Kane, for example, like his struggle to come back from this injury when he had, in New York to now play in Detroit, like phenomenal. Like that, like phenomenal. Like that doesn't happen. You don't get that sleeping on the couch to come back and play at the high level that he's played at all season. You get that from hard work and mental toughness. And I couldn't agree with you more, Trevor. It was really like, it was sad to see that somebody would go there, just for, Twitter likes or looks. It's like, it doesn't equate.
What pissed me off more is that this is a person. Well, I mean, you could probably figure out why they no longer work for who they work for, but like a guy who is an alleged analyst who works for all these other teams or for these, television, whatever companies, research companies, like that's just such a fucking easy, just stupid fucking claim to make. And if you want to have an honest conversation about the inequalities of, the middle class and the lower class, or the upper middle or lower middle, and like that's one thing, but to take it, like, use Zach Hyman, like that was the worst fucking thing you could like use is Zach Hyman. Like, and what's sad now is like that discussion can still happen, but like for the next probably couple of months, no one's gonna want to have that discussion because it's gonna be like, oh, we're gonna talk about Zach Hyman again. Like, fuck, come on, bud. Like, seriously, that was wild. But yeah. So, well, Coach, I think that pretty much wraps up episode 32, huh?
Yeah, that was a good one. I think people get a lot out of Kevin Willis's book. And I once again, we appreciate Kevin coming on. People pick up with that hockey grit, grind in mind, and you'll get a lot out of it for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So I am Trevor DiCarlo,
I'm Andrew Trumbull.
and thanks for listening, and we will catch you guys on the next one.